Hello and welcome to our Convergence on Sanctions and Export Controls webinar, brought to you by the Network for Financial Crime Prevention, NFCP, and High Coast Compliance. We're really happy that you could join us today and watch this recorded session. And we are privileged to have Anders Heldestad. Anders brings extensive experience in trade compliance, export control management, and offering practical insights that bridge the gap between regulatory requirements and real-world implementation challenge. And we want to encourage active participation on our LinkedIn channels. Obviously, you can do that live since this is recorded. If you have any questions, concerns, anything, please reach out to either one of us and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. And the last bit of housekeeping before we have Anders introduce himself to the community is I just want to point out that we will express our own views and opinions during this conversation. This is not reflective or on behalf of our employer in any capacity, and everything we share is for informational purposes only. Please do not consider this legal advice. If you have any specific questions for your institution or regarding your institution, please reach out to your internal compliance teams or legal teams. Great. With that, all that behind us, Anders, it's really great to have you here. And if you could just give us an introduction to yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Louis. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. And a little bit about me. I'm a Swedish trade compliance enthusiast and have been so since 12 years ago. And as Louis said, this is just two guys having a little discussion and expression our personal opinions. And so, I'm really pumped up for it.
Thank you. And enthusiast is a good word. I've heard people call people like us nerds, but I think I like enthusiast a bit better.
Yeah, I've been in the field so long that I'm humble enough to call myself an enthusiast instead of an expert or anything like that.
That's a great way. Sometimes it bothers me when, people say, oh, yeah, you've been in the field in sanctions for so long, you're an SME or subject matter expert. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really like that because I'm still learning every day and everything is so dynamic. I wouldn't call myself an expert, but sure, if you want to say that, fine. But maybe we have to make that more popular. Just call me an enthusiast.
Yeah. And if you have done trade compliance for like 5, 6, 7 years, you're an SME. But if you stick around long enough, like for 12 years, you got to be an enthusiast.
Or crazy.
Or just plain crazy.
Awesome. So super excited that we could do this together. And let's just jump into it. So from what you've seen, how has recent geopolitical events like the Russia-Ukraine conflict or China tensions, have you seen that kind of reshape the intersection of sanctions and export controls? And if so, what are the biggest challenges that you feel companies face in keeping up with this, momentum or the dynamic, situation we may see ourselves in?
Yeah. First, I would like to say that in my point of view, I always looked as trade compliance as the problem at hand or the situation at hand in different dimensions. And I think trade compliance the last few years has gone from being two-dimensional to skip a level and become four-dimensional. So what I mean by that is previously you only need to think about who you sell to in combination with what you sell. And now you got to think in 4 dimensions: who you sell and what you sell and where you sell it and how. A little bit of a context with what I mean by that is historically export controls and sanctions were handled as 2 different universes. And now export controls is asking, is this product or technology sensitive? And sanctions asks, is this country, entity, or person restricted? But in the last few years, especially since everything going on in the world, all the different conflicts, those lines are blurred. And a single transaction today can involve both sides. It's never just export controls or sanctions. The product might be dual use and the buyer might be in a jurisdiction under sanctions or close to circumvention channels. So companies can't afford to separate those two anymore because in practice, they converge today in supply chains and delivery chains. So that's my kind of initial view on how export controls and sanctions has evolved lately.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And it also helps me realize I'm not crazy because I started in sanctions a little bit after you started your career. And I remember getting, because my career started in the US, so I would sanction screening. Obviously, we see things pre-transaction, and I will see matches or potential matches to the BIS list. And then I would ask, okay, what do we do with those? And they're like, that's just trade. Don't worry about it. Just worry about potential sanctions matches. But then why are we screening it? Why is it part of this, pipeline if we're not supposed to do something with it? And then later on, I would hear those types of matches. We just talk to trade finance about that. But as I moved further in my career, I realized trade finance doesn't know anything about sanctions. They might know high level stuff about export controls, but they're in the business. So they're not the experts like you are sitting in the industry where you learn about the products and all these other nuanced things. So to me, it's clear the finance industry had this gap. But as your point of the last couple of years, thanks to Russia and the conflict in Ukraine, we're seeing more of a blending of these disciplines. And I still think there's a lot of work to do as far as training and upskilling, at least on my side of the fence. I'm not sure how it is, how you feel on your side, but there's still a lot of ambiguity, how to deal with the export control side, what's restricted, what's not. I think dual use goods is a bit more that has been already kind of introduced to us, but I think more of the hardcore export controls is what we're missing. So, I mean, that shift is definitely there. I think today and in the near future, you might see, positions now in different parts of in different industries where they want that dual role. So somebody to wear both those hats instead of one, but especially in a financial institution. But yeah, I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on that and how do you see things from where you sit?
Yeah, and from where I sit, I see more like moving hardware and technology instead of the financial side of things. And I think that you got to be agile right now. And for example, some organizations still treat export controls and sanctions as separate silos. Legal handles sanctions, logistics handles export control. Of course, that can work depending on your organizational setup and how your business works. But I do think that could create, blind spots. An integrated compliance program means that you use one single risk assessment, covering items, counterparties, destinations, and end use. Again, returning to my four-dimensional thinking, and let the specialists apply their knowledge and kind of work in a team instead of separate experts. So I think that the benefit is consistency. Everyone works from the same map. So when a new EU or US rule arrives, you update once, not in 5 places. So it's kind of you have a central function for everything compliance rather than different experts in different sides of the company. I do think that's the future model, to be agile enough to handle all the different sanctions that comes flying basically every month.
Right. No, that's a very great point. And I think from the rumblings and grumblings I've been hearing on LinkedIn is a lot of people are pointing to that we have to rethink the 3 models of defense structure because it's not proving to work. Also, the way we're siloed into specialities. So that's the point you bring up. Like, we shouldn't be just handling one domain because the risk could flow through different domains, especially, I'm not sure how it works in different industries, but in the financial industry, you're using different tools for different expertise. They're not talking to each other. So you don't see the full risk picture, which then makes things complicated. And then you might have these kind of gaps or things slipping through the cracks. So yeah, I think we have to really rethink how we're doing things, especially in current times.
Yeah. And also a note or highlight a risk. If you integrate too much, you can lose that depth of expertise. So you still need those matter experts, but for example, one for export controls, one for sanctions, and one for customs. So integration is about the data flow and have the team, have those persons in the same team so they can work together, not separately.
Yeah, great point. And that leads me to the next question. With the rise of smart sanctions, and also targeted export controls, and I guess, sectoral sanctions are targeted too. How can businesses balance compliance with the need for global market access?
See if I find my notes on that one. Smart sanctions, which one?
That was the second bullet point to the first question.
Yeah.
We could skip it.
I can't find that I have a note on that one.
All right, no worries. We'll just skip that one. Yep. Okay, so we'll just forego that one and go straight to question 2.
Yeah, that's totally cool. Must have misplaced that one. I can't really see that I basically thought of the questions. Complying with the regulations while maintaining access to critical raw materials. Well, it sounds kind of like the sanctions that the Chinese is putting on their exports of their minerals. What do you call ground minerals? The rare earth minerals. Yes. And their sanctions that they are putting basically towards the whole Western world so that they cannot get those essential materials that they need to build the ships, which then are sanctions from going to China. So it's like the essential components from China doesn't go and export to the countries that needs them to make the ships that are sanctions from going to China. So they are basically crippling one each other.
Yeah.
So that's basically a reaction of the functionality of those types of sanctions. And I guess that's where you were aiming at to go with the question.
Yeah, I guess from both sides, both from the Chinese side, who's, like you said, in retaliation, enacting other export controls to protect their commodities, but also a way to, I guess, maybe punish those that they feel are against them. But it's also happening vice versa from other countries like the US who are doing similar things. So it's becoming of a reciprocal maybe battle to see who can hurt the other one most to get the reaction they want.
Yeah, it's like we're not friends anymore. And because I cannot buy your products, you're not allowed to have my minerals that you need to build your products. And who is the one that actually get punished for that? Basically, it's the end user. We're not getting all the gadgets that we want to have or need to have because those two isn't friends anymore.
Right. Yeah, and I think that holds true for just sanctions in general. The ones who get the most impacted are the innocent people who have nothing to do with the conflict. It's just the regimes have decided to not play nice, and now they're facing repercussions from different countries, and who suffers? It's the innocent people, which is very unfortunate. I think they're trying to limit that with more of these kind of smart sanctions where it's certain commodities instead of a whole country being sanctioned. But still, as you pointed out, if we can't get the gadgets we need, it's still the innocent people being impacted.
Yeah, and it's like the iPhone example. iPhone is designed in California, but made in the Chinese part of the world. And so if we would have a American-made iPhone, the price would be doubled. And that makes me sad as a customer because I don't want to pay the double price for the iPhone. It's nearly enough expensive right now.
So true. And I think that's what also kind of worried people with the latest U.S. administration coming in and said, oh, we're going to bring jobs back. We're going to make all those, manufacturing jobs come back to the United States. And yeah, that might sound great for a few who've been out of work or whatever. But, in the supply chain or, the commodities, it's like, wait, it's already expensive. Now, if you're going to have everything done in the U.S., or even maybe another Western country, it's still going to be, add to the cost astronomically that we don't even know. We'll guesstimate double, but it could be more. So it's like some things where in theoretically might sound great, but in practice, you're like, that can't work. That's not sustainable.
No, not at all. And as I said, as a customer, I would be devastated.
Yeah, exactly. All right, cool. Let's move on to the next question. So this is around kind of program integration, as you were mentioning before. So should sanctions compliance and export controls be managed as separate functions? So you already touched on this, but maybe we could delve a bit deeper. Or is there a compelling case for full integration? What are the risks and benefits of each of those?
Yeah, I think it's more like that you need to build your compliance program from the ground and up, but be supported from the top to the bottom. So you got to have the management commitment, of course, to have the best possibilities to build your compliance program in the first place. But some organizations, I think, would benefit from having the more separate expert functions in different departments. For example, if you have a sales department that are pretty much detached from all the rest of the company, you could have the benefit of having some trade compliance person at the sales department, for example. And then if you have, for example, a separate logistics organization, some companies outsource the logistics and shipping parts, and then maybe you also could have the compliance parts of shipping and so on also in that external partner function. But if you have a little bit more streamlined company, for example, if you're a small or a medium-sized company, maybe you benefit of having all those different compliance roles more integrated. But as I said before, you always face a risk when you are letting experts have their own area of responsibility too far away from each other, and they always need to communicate, because the one in sanctions may know things that the one in logistics need to know to for example, you don't want to have a transit delivery through the wrong countries and through the wrong regions because of perhaps some areas is more heavily sanctioned right now, and then the sanctions people need to talk more with the logistics people to have the delivery and freight routes more accurately planned. So that's kind of my thing or thought on the balance of things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing. I guess delving deeper into a previous comment you made, but I agree. I mean, too much. I guess I've learned that too much of anything, whether we believe it's good or bad, too much of it is not a good thing, right? So it's finding the right balance. So, I think you said it well, like, okay, there might be certain departments that need certain expertise in there. They shouldn't just be siloed into this other department, because then what happens when that certain team is working on a project, they might forget to pull in somebody that has that additional expertise they need to mention things that they need to consider. So if that person's already embedded in the team, it just makes that communication a lot quicker and that agile approach, as it were. But yeah, I think fully kind of might not be a smart choice, because then you lose expertise. So no, I think that makes perfect sense. But I think it's finding that right balance. I think that's the tricky part.
Yeah, and sometimes I like to think of a successful compliance program like an Excel spreadsheet. You have the different functions in the columns, and then you have your compliance function as a row across all those columns. So they are an expert in their separate function in their own column, but they also have that row of trade compliance people where they integrate and share basically what's happening in their everyday work, so that they can help each other.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. And I guess we would be remiss to not add to this conversation about technology and AI. Jumping into the next question, what role do you believe AI and automation play? I don't know why I'm stuttering so much. What role does AI and automation play in streamlining compliance processes? And are there any risks of over-reliance on technology in your view?
Yeah, I do think that technology, AI, and automation is a key to grasp all details that you need as a compliance person to have in your assessment of the situation at hand. Because everything's happening right now, and everything that has with sanctions to do is basically navigating a much larger landscape than before. And having analyze all your trade routes. Perhaps you're a company with many trade routes, and you're not having like this. You may be dealing with commodities that's not even subject for export controls. They do not have an export control classification, but due to your trade routes, you're always going to be subject or a possible subject for sanctions. So then if you have that AI or automated tool to spot anomalies in your trade routes, for example, something is every time it's on this specific trade route, but this specific trade, it's going on another, for example, it's diverted through Turkey instead of Greece, and you may not spot that because everything is seemingly normal from that view that you as a trade compliance person is looking. But the AI or automated tool can basically highlight anomalies for you to have for your assessment. So I do think that's a key to a successful compliance program in the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think, in recent years, as technology or the access to technology has grown, I think we've been also overwhelmed by the amount of data that we've had to kind of sift through. And I think also, and with that, with technology continuing to grow, and with the more adoption of AI, now we could have the systems pick up on anomalies, as you said. We could also have systems picking up on new typologies of, let's say, circumvention or money laundering, different things, but also with the right oversight, take away some of the more monotonous tasks that we've had traditionally in reviewing things. So I think I agree with you. It's the way to go. But it's just, again, what I mentioned before, finding the right balance and how we implement it in smart ways, have the right governance in place, and have the right oversight to make sure that there's no kind of gaps or glitches that pop up. Because again, this is machines. Obviously, they're very smart and very fast, but we are the ones who are teaching these systems, and we're the ones that could think in gray area where systems think more, binary, on and off, right? Yes or no. So we still have to keep that in mind that, as you mentioned, there might be certain instances where it might look nefarious on face, but because of that gray area, we could say, well, no, this is fine because XYZ, this is normal course of business, or, the ship decided to be diverted. There's an explanation behind it. The system is not aware of it. So I think it's just, again, finding the right ways to really hone the technology more appropriately.
Yeah, and that's also where the danger lies, I think. So if you trust the tool blindly, you can create a false confidence. And of course, regulators won't accept the system said it was fine. They want to see judgment and traceability and basically a human decision behind everything. So I would say automate the frequent and repetitive and keep humans on the novel and high risk.
Definitely. Cool. So, yeah, we're quickly running out of time here. I've really enjoyed the conversation, but hopefully we could have supplemental conversations with hopefully our audience reaches out to us with things that they want us to talk about. I know we could definitely find other things to discuss, and maybe even do a live webinar in the future. But in the meantime, as we're wrapping things up, as you think about what we've discussed today and kind of what you see in your day-to-day, what kind of key things would you want people to keep in mind or walk away from this? Are there any key challenges or any key maybe suggestions they should have with their program? But yeah, just some pearls of wisdom that you want to leave our audience with.
Yeah, and I would say, as I said in the beginning, for me, trade compliance is moving from being two-dimensional to being four-dimensional. And you should also see your compliance program in new dimensions as well. So compliance is no longer just about avoiding penalties. It's also, trade compliance is a guide for you to navigate successfully in doing your businesses, but it's also a golden opportunity right now to show your potential customers that you have everything on track when it comes to trade compliance. So that could actually be a good marketing pitch as well, to show others that trade compliance, you become a more attractive business partner. So I would advise to use trade compliance strategically as well. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, no, super interesting. And I feel like this is something that has come up in the past is, using compliance to an advantage, right? To a competitive advantage, meaning if you have a best in class program and you could prove that to the customers and the regulators, then that's going to create trust. That's going to limit reputational risk. So yeah, that would go a long way. So I agree with you 100%. And yeah, I think, as you mentioned, we have to be a bit more dynamic and be a bit better at keeping up on these not red flags, but keeping up on being educated enough to pick up on, these nuances. And I'm just wondering, even selfishly, what would you recommend for somebody who's in another field of compliance who wants to learn more about trade compliance or export controls? Is there, a certification you might recommend, or, some readings or personal learning somebody could take on to then kind of, beef up their experience on that side?
Yeah, Something that always pops up when you're doing trade compliance is, even though you're a strictly European company, you always end up in having the American trade compliance questions. So, for example, it's very likely that if you're doing businesses internationally, you will stumble up the wordings EAR or ITAR. I would always recommend I'm trying to think of their name. Their webpage is learnexportcompliance.com, and I do think it's ECTI, the Export Control Training Institute. It's a US-based company that teaches US trade compliance. And they have a few European seminars, 4-day sessions, 2-day EAR and 2-day ITAR. I think there are both in Amsterdam and in London each fall or spring. So I've attended those seminars, and basically it's teaching. You have a 4-day really good lesson with, you get bombarded with US trade compliance things. And as a trade compliance enthusiast or a trade compliance nerd, those are 4 days of fun. And as the regulations do change pretty quickly, I would recommend, if you haven't had any trainings within the EAR or ITAR in the last few years, you should really look at that direction. And I'm sure you could include a link to their page.
Yeah, we'll do that. Good call out there. So yeah, if anybody who's interested in what Anders just mentioned, we'll put a link when we publish the recording of this, so you can look into it a bit further. Awesome. So thank you again very much for joining us today. Very informational. I think it's very poignant in the world of compliance we see ourselves in today. As mentioned, the recording will go up soon. So if there's anyone who has any questions, suggestions, concerns, feel free to reach out to myself or Anders via LinkedIn, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. If you don't follow us already, please follow us on LinkedIn. You could also find High Coast Compliance on LinkedIn as well. Also, we have a website where you could become a member if you like. So that's nfc.info. And yeah, I think that's about it. Any parting words from you, Anders, before we let you go? Awesome. All right. So have a great rest of the day and weekend when you get there. And we'll talk again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.